Awesome. I don't know if before we hand it over to Ladrina, Marlon, did you want to quickly introduce yourself or?
Yeah, I'll be able to do that on record now. My name is Marlon Taylor. I work for Department of Homeland Security, CISA. I have a background in some of the other OASIS standards. I've been a participant of Sticks and Taxi under CTI, and then also working with Cacao now, working on that one as well. So really trying to see how all these things are coming together, looking at OCA as a possible place for all those things to come together, and also sponsor of the work that APL has done as well. So just looking forward to seeing how we're able to advance cybersecurity information sharing, and then also, really helping to advance products and tools within this ecosystem to help defend against cyber attacks within this group. So glad to be here. Looking forward to all the great things.
Awesome. Welcome, Marlon. Happy to have you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have our next agenda item, which is reviewing the charter. Charlie, since this is of your development here, I just put the link into the chat. Would you mind doing a review?
Oh, sure. Let me try and get I'm trying to get the link to fire. 1 second.
I can do it, Charlie. You want me to do it?
Sorry, I'm just stupid. Too many screens up. It was.
No, that's okay. I'm happy to do it. Here we go.
So yeah. So we took a while back before the holidays, we took a stab at putting together a draft, and we passed it around for review. I think we talked about some of it at the last meeting. Was that right, Dee?
We did.
Okay. And so Dee has incorporated the changes. And so basically, basic start with the project name, and then give the overall abstract that we're, let folks read it. But I mean, basically it's going to seem very similar to things from the OCA charter, but we're interested in creating a standardized approach for representing cyber threat actor behaviors in a shareable format. And we want to help all vendors and researchers and publishers freely exchange the information. And there we go. So using mutually agreed upon standards, kind of stressed on the societal benefits, but basically, I think what a lot of us have said in the past, right now, the data that's mostly shared are IOCs and CVEs. And while those are important, the more complex behaviors, sometimes it's very challenging for certain organizations to be able to use that effectively to help their network defense. So we're looking to create some products on this working group or at least some standards and examples that the rest of the community could better use to make adversary behavior more accessible. So not just the tactics and techniques that we get from MITRE ATT&CK, which is very valuable, but also a lot of the procedures and the sequencing of procedures to help people better understand how to tie in analytics. We'll see some relationships to a few other projects. A lot of the research we're doing here at APL has focused heavily on representing these behaviors in sticks, and think that we'll be working very closely with the stick standard still, and as well as taxi. And we also believe that as we get into more complex bits, a big reason why Marlon's here also is, sticks and cacao, we think are both going to play a big role as we move forward. And then stressing that when we talk about these behaviors, analytics will be a big part of that. And so products such as Sigma and Kestrel from the OCA as well, we believe will be playing a role in our work. I think I heard somebody had a question or statement. Okay, then we put forward in the charter for repository and licenses that we'll have a repository on the GitHub for initial code, and basically for non-code elements, we're looking at Creative Commons 4.0 open source license and Apache v2 for actual code contributions. And then some of the initial contributions shared some of the APL worked under a task known as IACD for CISA and NSA, put together a white paper on this concept a while back. We had a video that went along with that. There's a couple videos, one on the concept and a small demonstration from a conference that we ran a little while ago. And then listing the contributors, wasn't looking to be exclusive, but we kind of took a stab from some of the folks that were helping to work on the charter and put those names down there to start with. Happy to expand it. But that's the charter at a high level. There's some discussion. Very happy to have it. And it looks like Dee also posted the charter in the Slack as well, the full text.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie. I just want to do a quick acronym check and make sure that everybody here is familiar with the relationships to other projects and what those are, just at a very high level. Sticks, Cacao, Sigma, Kestrel, or any other acronyms or things that anyone can use clarification on?
I do have an acronym related. Sorry, was someone else going to say something?
No, go for it, Jason. Sorry.
So I do have an acronym related thing that I'm not sure if maybe we want to tackle in this group or add to the charter around a statement of direction, right? But as I've been diving into this whole area recently, you know, I find one of the items of, let's just say, confusion in the space right now is indicators of attack versus indicators of behavior. And, you know, so I think we all agree on what IOC is, right? And how IOB is then up leveling it. But what about IOA? Is IOB and IOA the same thing? Are they different things? Are we talking about, you know, do we, I think it would be worthwhile writing down what we think this group's point of view is on indicators of attack versus indicators of behavior. Even, you know, if it's as simple as we believe they're the same, let's write it down. If we think they're different and here's the difference, write that down. Because I actually think it's, if we could come up with a solid point of view on that, it would actually be great, because I actually haven't seen anybody publicly do that. Anyway, that's just something that I recently was thinking about because I was finding it confusing reading through all the different articles. So any thoughts on that? IOAs versus IOBs? Is it just two names for the same thing, or?
My 2 cents, I think it's a good idea to take a hard look at the differences. I'll confess I have a pretty rudimentary understanding of using IOAs as a term. It's not one that I use often, but from what I've seen, I think it includes more. It looked to me like it included a wider variety of types of information, like more reports and things like that seem to fall under there. But I'm happy to just be ignorant here and say that maybe we should do a deeper look there. I don't know if you had some initial thoughts on it, Jason, besides the kind of confusion of what does it all mean? That I'm open.
I mean, my only initial thoughts are, I can't remember the EDR vendor I was reading the blog around. I can't remember who it was, but
McAfee or Semantic was somebody I thought was doing a lot on that topic, but I don't remember.
Yeah, it almost seems to me like it depends on who is writing the position, whether or not they use the word indicators of behavior versus indicators of attack. To me, they seem very similar, and maybe the market just hasn't decided the right name, but I could be wrong. Anyway, any other thoughts? Like,
No, I do. Yeah. And just as we're talking, I was running some quick Googling, and definitely McAfee definitely put out, as you're saying, McAfee put together a paper on that concept. I don't know who else is using it that way.
Indicator of attack, you mean?
Yeah, I think CrowdStrike as well.
Yeah, I know I've seen it with CrowdStrike. Yeah, I mean, I don't have, I wouldn't say I have a strong opinion on this at all. I just brought it up because it's something that I've stumbled upon recently. And since, we've called this work group indicators of behavior sharing, is this part of the mission? Is it the same thing? Are these just different names for the same thing? I don't know.
Yeah. And I think some of it's a little early, like to get in some of these weeds. I know in our own research, we've been looking closely at tying the relationships of behaviors, detections, and response all together in a sticks bundle. And that might be considered larger scope than what we as a working group want for the indicator of behavior. Because I know we haven't really gotten into those type of weeds yet.
Yes, exactly. And this is a whole other discussion. But yeah, that's another thing that I've been looking at, Charles, is there's this wider area, as we start to create, up level all these things and create these bundles that combine detection, intelligence, and response into one package and collaboration around it. I found that there's not really a good word for that. And I've been trying to figure out, I've been bouncing around the idea of defense intelligence as opposed to threat intelligence. But
it's a good idea. It's a good word. We've just been calling them behavior bundles, which I know isn't really the right final answer.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the final answer will be what the market makes up, some marketeer. But anyway, I don't want to distract too much with the topic, but that was an item I think would be good for the group just to tackle, is what is the point of view on indicators of attack? What is it versus this group?
So is it drawing the distinction between an attack and what we mean by behavior?
So Daryl, this is where I don't know, right? When I go and read those articles from CrowdStrike and McAfee, to me, it sounds like they're describing indicators of behavior. So I don't, these might just be different words that different marketing teams are using for the same thing. I don't know.
Or it could be that they don't, with all due respect to the marketing people, they don't know the difference. Right, and nobody's told them, so they're just using terms interchangeably, which is, if they don't have an engineer, I would think, personally, I would think a behavior distinctively involves a pattern of human activity, whereas attack, as it's been largely defined by MITRE in the marketplace or influenced as a point of discussion, means TTPs, right, that are the processes have more to do with, or the tactics, have more to do with behavior, but the techniques have more to do with behavior. With the tools or things, the technical means vary. And that's when I think of an attack, I think of all of those things collectively, right? The pattern, the tools that are in use, and then the processes that are exploited. Whereas I think of behavior, I think of something that's, from a volition standpoint, involves the actual, in some method of intent, and then there's a pattern.
It could be. So you're saying the indicators of behavior, as we've kind of been saying here, are the chain of TTPs, right? So the chain of TTPs that are used in the incident is those, and how to detect those TTPs. Those are indicators of behavior. And then I think what you're suggesting is
There's a
the
pattern.
indicator of attack may have an IOB and then have other things as well.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct. It could have multiple patterns. An attack, as post breach or whatever, when forensics occurs and you start to achieve some certainty of attribution, you would have different patterns. Potentially, you could have multiple patterns that make up an attack, right? But the TTPs are all of the things that are incorporated. The pattern is something within the attack that's repeated, and you see it reused as a pattern, something of behavior that's reused in the wild or in other instances. You see it recurring. Whereas what we've largely done in the industry, because nobody's talked like this, because we're sort of breaking the ice, is that they've talked about patterns in terms of from a technical aspect, right? Hashes, malware, all, they're talking about, rather than talking about it holistically, which is from a social engineering standpoint or from a process exploitation perspective that involves using those tools and tactics. I don't know if I confused everyone or not.
No,
Where
Right.
you're going, Daryl, there's kind of this big like kind of greater Venn diagram for attack maybe, and we can have different behaviors underneath that. Is that part of it?
That's what I'm thinking, because if you think about combat or just that you think of history or term, just I'm trying to think more holistically, so we're not just redefining words, right? We're not. So if we look at connotatively, historically, the term attack, you look at, in conventional warfare, you look at different tiers of attack, right? Even if you look at strategic planning systems that are used in military concerts, the earliest ones that are 40 years old would look at different aspects of the theater. You'd have an aerial aspect, right? And then you have tiers, literally working from the sky down. And then you look at your assets that are available in those tiers to accomplish your mission or to perform some task to help you accomplish your mission. Does that make sense? So when I think of an attack, that's what I tend to gravitate towards sort of mentally. And then you look at the enemy's, the pattern of behavior. That's what I tend to think of, sorry. I think it just in general, regardless of who you are, what country you're from, what time you're born in, that's a bigger theme that you can wrap your head around and start to get the idea of the concept and where it fits, regardless of who you are, if you're hearing it in the explanation.
Daryl, would you? I think it makes sense. Is this something you might want to take a stab at, like just penning a paragraph on like what your perspective is on IOB IOA? You can then mail it to the mailing list, and we can like see.
Yeah,
could that might, I think that might be a good way to move it.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. Yeah, and then definitely feedback would be more necessary to polish anything.
Yeah, for sure. But it's easier. It's easier to tear something when there's a straw man there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, excellent point. Yeah, I will do that. So I volunteered myself for that work.
Thanks, Daryl.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I have one general question I'm wondering and wanted to put up for discussion related to the charter, which is my assumption here is that the IOB focus is on malicious activity, again, with the primary goal of sharing information to understand and stop attackers. I also wonder, because in the purpose section, we talk about by understanding normal activity, how much the idea of normal, for example, false positive activity, IOBs could, or perhaps how much should the focus of normal or false positive activity, how much should this group be looking at that activity?
I think it should kind of be part of the goal, right? That the mechanisms that are built allow you to be, I don't know how to put this. You know, basically we'd want whatever we do for IOB sharing to you know, encourage as high fidelity detections as possible to reduce the false positives. I guess that's what the way I'd put it. But are you talking about, Ladrina, like creating a behavior specifically as a false positive detection, or reducing false positives from detections you create, I guess?
Jason, thank you for asking it that way. I'll admit this was brought to me by one of my colleagues in our managed services department, just in sharing that one of the biggest issues they have are false positives. So I think that this request I'm passing along and sharing with the group is to make sure that the detections we're sharing through IOBs are high fidelity enough to make sure that we are zeroing in on the malicious activity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
And I'll share personal feedback on the charter. I greatly appreciate and agree with everything in here. I just had to, I guess, bring up that piece of feedback that I'd gotten from a colleague. Anything else on the charter? All right, thank you, Charlie. Really happy to see this up, and thank you, Dee, for posting it to GitHub. So this is something we can more widely share, which is exciting. So I'll go on to the next order on the agenda, which is to really formalize some of the leadership of the group. While I am guiding this meeting, I want to acknowledge that we are looking to get a chair or co-chairs for people interested in putting their hat in the ring to guide our future meetings, future directions. I am happy to contribute in some capacity in guiding the group, but I also want to open up and see who else would be interested in participating in a chair or co-chair function.
And so Ladrina had, this is Charlie. And as I know we were passing some emails earlier today, but you know, we here at APL are happy to contribute whatever ways we can. And I know I end up hogging up a lot of the oxygen on chatting on these calls. So I'm trying not to over push my, my views, but I think, it'd be good to have a variety of viewpoints on here and potentially, KJ, Marlon, having, I think, CISA playing a role is a key part. We'd be happy to do that, as your representatives, happy to discuss it, or happy to have you guys on there as well. I don't want to speak for CISA as I'm here supporting y'all's efforts. But I think that having that viewpoint would be very valuable for shaping some of this. But I also would like to make sure we have multiple reps across industry so that we don't dominate the discussion.
Understood. And as this is my first meeting, understanding some of the context about how we're coming to be and things like that, I like to get some more information, and maybe that's something we could have a sync on with the current leadership prior to, before, soliciting anything like that. But definitely looking to see all the things that this group is working on. We went over the charter at this point, seeing some of the other things that we may have on the roadmap through OCA, stuff like that. I like to get some more information on that if possible.
Makes sense, of course.
We'll leave this item open for another few minutes here, but first I wanted to ask, perhaps Dee knows this logistical question I have, which is, having participated in some of the other OCA meetings, I know that we've previously had different guidelines for maybe, I'm thinking of participation in the PGB, voting in for members, but I wanted to ask if we have any official process or anything we should be aware of for this group here and this conversation at hand.
So this is Dee. How did I know you're going to ask that question? I do have an answer. There is some guidance in the policy guideline. I can put the link in here, but basically it says that committees must have chairs or co-chairs that will be elected by a full majority vote from the committee. So given that we're structured a little bit more loosely than the PGB, I would think that this is probably a process that we could complete today if everyone's in agreement with it, with that process. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I wasn't aware that the committees had to, but yeah, we should be able to do that today. I don't see any reason why not. I
So
mean,
think,
I know.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to go and brush up on that because I know that there's rules on the technical steering committee and the project governing board, but in terms of like any working groups that are in the projects and things of that nature, I didn't think that there were specific rules that chairs and whatnot were mandatory. I'll have to go and take a look at that. Because
So this, yeah, I circled up with Chet, and this is where he referred me. The link that I put in here.
yeah, but this is
Technical committee.
yeah, but this is for Oasis TCs, and we're not a TC.
Right. Yeah. This was just the response that I got from Chet. Do you want me to get more clarity around that? Yeah, I did not see that in the open process and the open project rules, but again, he is the expert. So
Yeah, I guess my only concern is having to create too much process for all of these different groups, because there's no
Yeah.
formal, because in an open project, right? So there's no formal membership for this group.
Right,
So how would we do votes? Like there's
Right.
there's no roster, right? So I don't totally understand what that would mean, because there's no roster in this group.
right,
There's nobody to vote. Like we could have a consensus on this one phone call here, but it doesn't really mean anything.
right,
Kind of what I was worried about too, because, next month we could have 40 people from CrowdStrike, McAfee, Symantec, Threat Connect, tons of other places could join at any time.
right. But we do need leadership, and we do need, someone to be responsible for setting out the agenda and running the meetings.
Yeah, and to me, right, exactly. So to me, this is more of we're looking for a program coordinator for the group, and that's more what I would say is what we're trying to staff here, because when it comes down to it, right? So the way that the governance then occurs, like to answer that question, oh, well, what if, CrowdStrike and McAfee and 40 other people come in here, and how do we decide the direction of where this project is going, right? Well, see, what happens is right now, this is a working group, and we are working on this problem set according to the charter. If and when this working group starts creating code, right? So Charles, once your work is able to be released, right? And we start looking at, okay, there's actual code here, then that's where governance automatically kicks in, because the code itself, that's where all of the IPR policies in the OCA come into play on that code. And there's the technical steering committee and the PGB. And if people, if we want to have new maintainers, they can exercise all these different channels to do that via open governance, right? So that it's at the code level where the IPR comes into play, not so much these phone calls. That's just my perspective though, D, and we can go talk more with Chet about it. I'm just trying to figure out, because we don't have a roster, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to do votes.
Right. I agree with you, but putting it off, I love the fact that we've got this momentum, and I would hate for us to lose the momentum. I agree with you that the contributions to GitHub is sort of the gatekeeper, but we do need the leadership kind of role, just to make certain that we stay on course. I'm happy to do it, but I'm thrilled that Ladrina and Charlie are willing to be co-chairs, we can call them for now, or leaders.
Well,
or
yeah,
whatever you wanna call them.
So unless anyone here objects, I would propose that we make Ladrina and Charlie the co-chairs, right? It's just that I don't think that a vote is required, is what I'm saying. To me, it's more of a.
I second that motion.
Who took this long behind me? What happened? Where'd you guys go?
I heard it. The yeas are unanimous.
This is Marlon. What I was going to say is I think that there is some level of guidance for these types of groups. From what I gleaned from my review before, when I even found out about OCA in the first place, but I don't know all the details, but I do think there's also like a payment for certain types of level of participation, unlike the TCs where you have to pay to be a part of it in the first place. You don't have to pay to be a part of it. But I do think there are some leadership positions that may require some financial contribution. And I would just verify all that stuff with Chet and crew, because they know that stuff, or they have the POCs for that.
Yeah, that's to be on the governing board, Marlon. So
Right.
if you want to be, so with an open project, right, to be on the governing board of the OCA itself, you have to be a sponsor. And then essentially what you get with that is you get the sponsorship, and you also get a seat on the governing board, which decides kind of the long-term strategy of everything that's happening in the OCA. And the governing board also decides who gets to be on the technical steering committee and whatnot. So they are kind of an ultimate authority, but you don't have to pay to participate in any of the projects because they're all open source projects and open working groups. So you don't have to be a sponsor to be in any of these conversations. That's the key difference between a TC and an OP in terms of the governance anyway.
Right. So with that, then the leadership for the projects is separate than the sponsorship level one, correct?
Correct.
And the leadership at each of the different projects is more flexible because it doesn't require anything. So then the only question I would then ask is, what's the responsibility for the leadership of the projects towards the technical steering committee or those that actually have sponsorship authority? I haven't seen that, but I think that's kind of that gap there as well. Understanding that, hey, if the projects are flexible, like how flexible can they be? Understanding that there's a higher level umbrella that's by, the sponsorship authorities and the steering committee, just understanding that scope.
Yeah, so I can send you some stuff on this after, Marlon, but the key is that the sponsors form the PGB. The PGB appoints the TSC, who decides who can then be maintainers of the different source code projects. So there's kind of this cascade, right, of authority where at the highest level, the sponsors who are forming the PGB can, have some governance over everything that happens in the OCA. But down at the lower level, at the project level, it's mostly based on technical contributions, right? Like the folks driving the projects are the ones contributing technically, just like any other open source project. The PGB doesn't really get involved. They would only get involved via escalation, right? That's basically how it proceeds.
Okay, thanks.
Marlon, thank you for raising that. And I just have to shout out that it appears that you, like me, are a reader of fine print. And I appreciate that so much. So thank you for that.
No problem. I asked because I like to understand myself.
I also want to make sure, I know we have a couple folks on the line who haven't spoken on this issue. So in particular for Russ, Kurt, or Paula, if you'd care to contribute anything or put yourself forward, I just want to make sure to give you the space to talk if you wish to.
I'm in full support of Charlie. He's my fearless leader.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think I agree with the path forward that we have at the moment.
So Charlie, if you're willing, it appears you and I should sync offline to plan our next session.
I'm all for syncing and serving as your deputy, Ladrina.
Excellent.
I think that's a fine way for us to start. Marlon, KJ, we can discuss too, I think this can be somewhat fluid and not deeply formal, but yeah, I'm happy to help work with you, Ladrina, to, make sure we're getting solicitations for the agendas and getting the meetings executed and helping drive things forward for now.
Okay, that sounds great. And Charlie, we'll sync offline.
Sounds good.
So thanks everybody, and we are 9 minutes till the top of the hour. This leaves us for our last item of business, which is literally any other orders of business. The floor is open.
Well, we had some, so we're not at full release of our, code yet, Jason, but we do have some things we want to share. I don't think 8 minutes would be enough time to really go into the detail, but perhaps in February we could share more, because additionally, wanted to thank Jason for helping to broker conversations between our work and some of MITRE Ingenuity, which will be happening, I think, tomorrow. And so perhaps we might get some more insights from there and have some good topics for February to start getting a little deeper into the geeky details.
Yeah, agreed. I'm hoping that'll go well. And maybe if there's anybody else from this call, by the way, so what Charlie's referring to is, we recently joined the Center for Threat Informed Defense, and there's a project going on there that's similar to this. I can't go into too many details since it's CTI or it's TLP Amber. But regardless, I wanted to connect the two groups so that they could more understand what we're working on. If anybody here wants an invite to that call, obviously the invitation's open. I can invite you to join. It's just kind of information sharing at this point, because I'm trying to figure out, if they could like lower the amber a little bit to make it share more information. But anyway, I'm all about bridge building, so we'll see where that goes. I don't know if you'd be able to share any of the work in progress, Charlie, tomorrow or not.
I've got 27 slides ready to go.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
And one thing that I've assumed with this group, that just by the nature of it being an open group, everything from submitted to IOB working group by default has to be TLP wiped. I think, would we all agree that since we're looking to put this on a public GitHub, all of this, everything we put out has to be full public release?
It pretty much is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see another way to do it, but I thought it'd be good to actually just go on record saying that, so that it's on record saying it. Okay. But yeah, we have some things to share, and gets us a step closer to having something we could put into the repo besides to go along with the charter. So.
Awesome.
Great. And Jason, if folks want to join, that session with CTID is tomorrow, Wednesday, the 12th?
Yes. And yeah, and if you are interested, just ping me and I'll add you to the invite. Just message me on Slack or send me an email. It's let me just try to find the time. My calendar.
I think it's 3 p.m. Eastern.
Yes, 3 p.m. Eastern. Yep. Thanks.
Great. Any other business from the group?
Should we just try and set the next meeting time real quick?
Are we leaning towards second Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern?
That works for me.
That would be the 8th, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, that is. Okay, I'll go ahead and set it up on the groups.io. list and encourage everybody on Slack to join that again. So good, we can go ahead and I'll just set that cadence up and we'll be set hopefully for the rest of the year.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Dee.
You're welcome, Ladrina. Charlie, thank you so much, and welcome to the new folks. Looking forward to the meeting next month.
I am as well, and hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their week, rest of the month.
Thanks so much, Ladrina.
All right, take care, all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.